a lot of women wait to feel confident before they go after the thing they want to go after. And that doesn't really work because the way that we actually get confidence is by taking risks and trying new things and seeing what happens. I refer to it as a science experiment, right? Like, think about the scientists that are trying to cure cancer. They fail all the time, but they learn from their failures. They make adjustments. They start to move ahead and ahead. What would happen if all these scientists that come up with cures for things or that create new innovations stopped after they failed or got nervous that it might not work?
This is By Joyan Season 2. I'm your host, Joyan Chan, and every Wednesday we bring you inspiring stories, powerful message, and fun conversations with me and my special guests and friends, and it's my personal mission to empower you to live and lead a life with joy. This podcast is for you if you're looking for more joy, courage, passion, and purpose in your life. Now let's dive into today's episode and get ready to laugh, learn, and live your life to the fullest. Our guest today works with high-achieving women to determine what success looks like to them now so life can feel as good as it looks. Since 2017, she has supported over 100 executives and leaders in advertising, entertainment, law, academia, marketing, and the non-profit sector, as well as multi-passionate entrepreneurs. Prior to coaching, she served as an executive and advisor to creatives, producers, and investors in the entertainment industry on award-winning Broadway productions and also as a creative executive on TV shows. But then she felt stuck and unfulfilled, and the first step was admitting that the life she would always dream about was not making her happy and was not what she wanted anymore. So she's here today to empower you to redefine success on your terms so life can feel as good as it looks. So guys, help me welcoming the high performance coach and the creator of the Art of Compassionate Command, Michelle Pollack.
Thank you. It's so great to be here, Joyan. I'm really thrilled to be here talking to your audience today.
Yeah, so the first place that I want to start with you is your backstory. So I want to know, and I'm so impressed with your background, everything that you have achieved in the past. So talk to us about your journey from being, if I'm not wrong, you were a Broadway actress or aspiring to be, and I read your story.
So yeah, I left the performing side before I actually got to Broadway. I was aspiring. I went to Northwestern University. I got my degree in theater. I moved to New York City and I did perform around the country for a few years. And then I was actually, I was at a callback for a national tour of a musical. And something it hit me like, this isn't what I want anymore. And I think I loved living in New York City. It was so energizing and I loved the food and the culture and I loved meeting new people. And I realized that while I wanted to be in the creative sector, it was a national tour for the musical Annie Get Your Gun, which is a really old school musical, and it's a fabulous musical. But I realized I wanted to be part of creating new and exciting entertainment. And I didn't want to leave New York. I didn't want to, go travel around the country doing a show that didn't excite me that much just to say, oh, I'm in a national tour, right? It just didn't feel aligned. So I then went and I worked on the other side of Broadway. I went and worked with producers, and I was part of the team to bring Baz Luhrmann's production of La Boheme to Broadway. I was part of the team that helped to bring Avenue Q to Broadway. And I worked in the very early days of In the Heights as well. So I still stayed in that creative world, but I knew I wanted to actually be a part of creating something new and innovative. Then I moved out to Los Angeles and I got into the world of television. And while I was there working in TV, I had this idea that I wanted to eventually be at the top, right? I wanted to run a network or own my own production company, still creating exciting, innovative um, opportunities for artists to express themselves and for fun and exciting material to get out into the world. But as I was working at CBS, I just started to feel small. I stopped bringing my full self to the work I was doing. I stopped feeling excited about what I was doing. But I was committed because I'd always finished everything I said I was going to finish, and I always achieved the things that I said I was going to achieve. I was not going to let that feeling get in the way of me getting to that, corner office, so to speak. Um, so I wouldn't stop. I wouldn't let it go, even though it wasn't making me happy. There were days where I would go and like rush to the bathroom and lock myself in the bathroom stall because I was having a panic attack because I was just so unfulfilled and unhappy at work. It just was not what I wanted for my life anymore, but it was so challenging for me to actually acknowledge that and to admit it. So eventually, the universe kind of did it for me. When I was 4 months pregnant with my oldest daughter, but I was not public about my pregnancy yet, I got a promotion. I got another promotion within the organization. Um, Great, on the right path. I'm on my way. And then when I was 8 months pregnant, so 4 months later, I got laid off.
Wow.
Um, People were up in arms. How are they laying off a pregnant woman? That would never happen today, right? There's no chance that, and a lot of people wanted me to sue, but I was so concerned about the stress and my pregnancy. And all I really cared about was making sure that I had a healthy pregnancy.
Yeah.
Turns out it was the best thing that ever happened to me. I don't know if I ever would have left. I think I might have stayed stuck in that hamster wheel, going around and around, going after the thing I said I was going to do, staying on that path, regardless of how I felt about it. But when I had some time to be home with my kids, reflect, I dipped my toe back in the water of entertainment for a short while. I was a creative consultant on the production of Grease Live that was on Fox in 2016. And I was like, this is not for me anymore. It
Mm.
was that time home with my kids, I think, allowed me to really reflect on what was most important to me. It allowed me to really get aligned with my values. And so I had been told for years, you should be a coach, you should be a coach. And at that point, I was like, that's a thing. What is it to be a coach, right?
Right.
But I actually started to explore, what does it mean to be a coach? What is that? And I went and took a course. And the first day I was there, it was so clear to me, yes, this is my thing. This is the thing I am meant to do. And so that was it. I dove right in. I got all the training that I wanted and needed to get. And that's what I've been doing ever since. I've been working. I started out just where I could find. And I found along the way that I was excited by the women that I was meeting who had a similar story to me,
Mm.
right? They felt stuck, they felt unfulfilled, they felt stagnant.
Yeah.
And I was relating most to them, they were relating most to me, and I was finding that that was who I was able to help shift the most. And so that's where I am today. I work with high achieving women, and for some people, success feeling as good as it looks does not mean leaving your job or switching careers entirely. For some people, that's a totally different, not everybody is the same path that I
Yeah.
had, but you don't have to stay stuck in that. There's not like so many people just think, well, this is just how it is. And that's not the truth. It's not just how it is. You have the ability to feel a sense of fulfillment, to feel excited, to take things to that next level. And that's what I help women to do.
I love that story. Like that's so beautiful. And because like I said to you in the very beginning before our podcast, is that I'm also a super achiever. And I actually had a similar experience. I was in a job, I wasn't passionate about what I was doing anymore. So I told them I want to leave and I want to do my own thing, although I had no idea what I wanted to do. So when pandemic hit, I went straight into depression because I couldn't figure out what I wanted,
Mm,
know who I was anymore. So then I went into, I stumbled upon coaching and podcasting now eventually. So I believe everything happened for a reason. Universe did it for you, for me, right, for everyone. So yeah. So why do you think? And the thing is, when I was in the job, I was like on the outside, I was also this like super achiever, like super successful, young, confident, right? But deep down, I was struggling. I was empty. So why do you think so many high achieving women, like we seem successful on the outside, confident, we have it all, we figure it out, but like but deep inside we are dying. Why is that?
mm. I think the biggest thing that happens for us as women and as high achievers is that the number one thing that we have been taught to go after, we're all good students, right? We all wanted to get the A's. We did whatever we needed to do to get the A's and do well in school and get to
Yeah.
university and, graduate at the top of our class. And what we learned in that process was how to shapeshift. We didn't learn how to critically think. We didn't learn what's most important to us. We learned what's most important to achieve that thing. And so what happens is that we say, what do we need to do to get to the top?
Right.
Who, like, rather than asking ourselves, who do I want to be as I get to the top? How do I want my life to look? What's most important to me? What do I value? We just say, what do I have to do? What are the things I have to do? Right. And you hit the goal and you think, okay, I hit the goal. I'm going to feel great now. And you don't have that feeling. And so then you set another goal. When I hit the next goal, I'll feel like enough. It will feel like enough. I will feel fulfilled. I will feel happy. And so it's this constant cycle of going after the next thing, going after the next thing, but you're not actually looking at the root cause of why you feel empty. And so I think what happens is so many of us abandon our values, abandon who we truly are at our core,
Mm.
because we see the people that came before us and we go after things the way they did. We use them as a model. But that's just because that worked for them. We don't actually know how they feel doing what they're doing, if they're happy. And the way they do something is not necessarily the same way that will feel right and will honor who we are in doing something.
Mm.
So, really, I think it all comes back to your core values and looking at what's most important to you and how do you honor that in how you show up in the world. So I think that's really what's underneath it all.
Yeah, I mean that's so true, right? Yeah, like everything you said that I can totally relate, like getting the A's, being the top of the class, like yeah, everything. So what is the most important? Because now you also help people to redefine success. What does it mean to you? It's not what we do, what we know what success looks like on social media, on magazine, newspaper, right? So what is most important when it comes to defining success for ourselves?
Well, so I think in addition to social media and the media, the other thing that happens is we get stuck in our idea of what success looked like from when we were 25, right? And then we're 30, 35, 40, and we never re-examine what was important to us at 25 might not be the same thing that's important to us at 40 or 45. What society says is most important might not be what we care about. So it's really coming back again to yourself and asking yourself the questions or working with a coach to ask the questions to help you get introspective and get to know yourself again. We live in this culture of constant productivity, do, 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 do. And so we're constantly going, 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 going. And we don't take the time to slow down to ask ourselves, is this working for me? Why or why not? why is this not working for me? What doesn't feel good? What makes me unhappy in this situation? All of those answers are are a window into what is it that you really want and desire. It's also, I think we think so much about the doing because that we forget about the other side of ourselves and who we're being, right? So it can get a little woo-woo for people to hear this, but it's actually really smart to consider we all have masculine and feminine energy, regardless of our sexual orientation. We all have masculine and feminine energy. Masculine energy is represented by doing. Feminine energy is represented by being. And we've all leaned so far into the masculine energy that we're unbalanced.
Yeah.
And so it's coming back into your feminine energy for both men and women
Mm.
to look at who do I want to be and slow down to get introspective to ask the kinds of questions that you need to ask to really get clear about what's next for you.
Yeah, yeah, I feel like slowing down, taking a pause is so key, right? Especially for higher achiever, because like you said, we are always in the doing, right? It's just about what's next, what is next, what is next. Now I have done this, what is next, right? It's always about the next goal, the next achievement. So yeah, taking a pause, slowing down, it seems so hard, but it's so needed. And something that you mentioned, you said balance should come off as, or one of the things that women should be striving for. Why why is that?
So I talked about the masculine and feminine balance, which is really important. I think women so often think the key to fixing this feeling that we have, or this feeling of lack of fulfillment or feeling of emptiness is, oh, I need more work-life balance. I need more work-life balance, right? I believe that when women actually just go after work-life balance, what they end up doing is adding more to their to-do list, right? It's not actually, it comes back to intention. I think what they're really going for is intentional living, balance in what's most important to me. But for some women, that might not look like a work-life balance. It might look like family is actually way more important to me
Yeah.
than work. I have a client who is a partner at a corporate law firm, but at the end of the day, what's most important to her is being a mother. And so she actually tried to quit her job
Wow.
because she realized my kids are young. This is the only time I'm going to have with them. They wouldn't let her quit. They gave her, they said, what do you want in order
Wow.
to stay? And she then got to negotiate from what was most important to her. It's a whole different ballgame. So now she's working on her terms, the way she wants. And, in that situation, she's very lucky. She's in a situation where her family did not need her income. So it was really about she had nothing to lose to negotiate in the way she wanted to negotiate. Now, that's not true for everybody, but
Mm.
there's still room for you to say, this is what's most important to me. This is what I need in order to be able to show up the best way possible for my job, for my company, for my team.
Mm.
And what I find time after time with my clients is that when they actually acknowledge what they want and need and start to operate from that place, their their companies are willing to work with them to give them what they want because they're showing up in such a powerful way that they don't want to lose
Mm.
them as employees. They don't want to lose that employee because they're adding so much and their energy is so beneficial to the organization because they love what they're doing, because they're coming from their values, they're setting boundaries around what they want. So it has nothing to do with work-life balance. I don't even know what that means anymore. It's such a buzzword in our,
Yeah.
in our society these days.
But so often, especially women again, we are so afraid to we don't even know what we want, right? I mean, not just women, like people, right? In general, like so many people don't even know what they want, and therefore they are not asking for what they deserve, right? And especially women in the workplace would be they're so afraid to ask for pay raise, or ask
Mhm.
for off day to go home and take care of the kids, So how do you help people, or especially women, since you only work with high achieving women? But in this case, it's women who are afraid to take risks, to ask for what they deserve, right? To and set boundaries. How would you help them?
I think part of, we are in a society where women have, this patriarchal society we have been raised in teaches women, has taught women that in order to survive, we
Yeah.
need to take care of everybody else's needs first, right? Now, even though it's 2024 and it doesn't feel like that's the way we should be thinking, for so many years, that was the way society worked. There were years when women could not, we couldn't own a home. We couldn't, it wasn't until 1974 in the United States that women were able to get a mortgage by themselves, get a bank account by themselves, take
Yeah.
out a credit card by themselves. And it wasn't until 1988 that women could get a business loan by themselves. So when you think about that, that's only 40 years ago, right?
Yeah.
And we needed men in order to survive. So we didn't want to rock the boat with a man because otherwise there was a fear of how can I possibly survive if whatever man in my life is supporting me in this way isn't happy with me. And so that still exists in our DNA. Those kinds of that mentality is passed down from generation to generation, and it takes a lot of work to undo it. So, first of all, you said women get so scared to ask for a raise. One of my favorite things to do is say, what's the worst thing that's going to happen? Right? To actually ask yourself that question. What's the worst thing that might happen if you ask for a raise? Because when we actually play that question out, most of the time we realize that we'll be okay. It might disrupt things a little bit, but like nobody's ever gotten fired for asking for a raise that I know of, right? They might say no. I'm
Yeah.
sorry, you can't have a raise right now. And that's the worst thing that could happen.
Yeah.
On the flip side, if you don't ask for a raise, what happens? You walk around resentful. You walk around, wondering, will I ever get a raise? And when you continue to question and question and question, like I said, you start to get resentful. I'm not making as much money as I should be making. And that energy shows up in the way you work and how you end up complaining a lot about and being frustrated at your job. And you might love your job, but if you don't think you're being paid what you deserve to be paid, that has an effect on how you feel about what you're doing. So that's the first thing I say is like it's always a great game to play to say, well, what's the worst thing that could happen? The other thing to remember is a lot of women wait to feel confident before they go after the thing they want to go after.
Yeah.
And that doesn't really work because the way that we actually get confidence is by taking risks and trying new things and seeing what happens. I refer to it as a science experiment, right? Like, think about the scientists that are trying to cure cancer. They fail all the time,
Yep.
but they learn from their failures, they make adjustments, and they start to move ahead and ahead. What would happen if all these scientists that come up with cures for things or that create new innovations stopped after they failed or got nervous that it might not work? They don't know if it's going to work when they set out. So if you kind of take on that mindset of being a scientist and going about things as a science experiment to see, will this work or won't it? And if it doesn't, what do I need to shift in order to try again next time? And that takes away that inner critic voice that tells you that you're bad and wrong or that shames you for not having success at something, right? So to have the courage to take the risks. That's what we really need, not the confidence to take the risks. The courage to take the risks and discover the outcomes, also to discover that when it doesn't work, we're okay. We don't die. Nobody hates us. Everything is okay.
Yeah.
When you do that again and again and again, it gets easier every time. And that's where confidence begins to come from. So there's that element. Um, I think that's really and then learning, I mentioned that voice of the inner critic, right? Starting to have awareness around the way you speak to yourself. Starting to have awareness of the things that you say to yourself that actually are not serving you in being courageous, not serving you in going after your dreams or the things that you really want to, and learning how to relate to that voice as not the truth
Mm.
and relating to it as being a part of you that's outside of you. So instead of thinking like, oh my gosh, I'm so ashamed at XYZ, you actually separate yourself from it and say, oh, my inner critic says I'm so ashamed. And when you start to hear it that way, it feels different because it's external. If somebody else said to you, I'm so ashamed that you did X, Y, and Z, you would have a different conversation about it. It depends on who the person is. If it's somebody that you really revere, if it's a mentor, there could be a lot of emotions. If it's somebody that you don't admire, then you go, oh, well, whatever.
Yeah.
That's their perspective and their point of view. And so starting to relate to your inner critic as somebody that actually is trying to keep you safe, but not necessarily supporting you in being courageous.
I love that. Is that why you say imposter syndrome is sometimes actually a good thing? Is that the reason?
My feeling about imposter syndrome being there's to me, there's two different kinds of imposter syndrome, right? There's the kind where you've been in a position for years and years and you've had tons of successes and you still have a voice that tells you
Right.
that your success is not because of your achievements and that, you know, you still
Cannot.
question
Yeah.
if you're really good at your job. That imposter syndrome, not so good. That's one we need to look at, and that's that inner critic voice talking to you. But when a woman goes after something new, or a man, when anybody goes after something new in their life, right? When they have the courage to take those risks, imposter syndrome is a natural thing to happen. When you're leveling up and trying new things, and you don't know yet whether or not you're an expert at it, or if you're going to be any good at it, or it's a brand new job or a brand new organization, it's natural to feel concern about whether or not you're going to be any good. That's a normal feeling. It's a normal question. Now, the key is not listening to that or not letting it stop you. But when we go after new things, there is fear. To
Mm.
have an expectation that even if I'm good at something and even if I'm confident, I'm not going to feel fear about it, that's an unreasonable expectation. And so that kind of imposter syndrome that starts to go, you're going to get found out, you're not going to be able to do this. And when you're trying something new, that's a part of trying something new is worrying that you're not going to be good enough at it. You got to find out, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's so true, right? I mean, I'm sure I personally, I still struggle with imposter syndrome, although, like you said, having achieved so much in my life or being a podcaster now, like sometimes when I have really like big guest on the show, I still feel like, who am I to interview this? Who am I to speak to this person? It's normal to feel that way. But like you said, we are leveling up, we are always becoming better and better. So that's how we grow our confidence. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. Now you are the creator of the art of compassionate command. How does
So,
compassionate
yeah.
transform someone's life?
So, compassionate command is the model that I use for leadership with my clients. And I talked earlier about that balance of the masculine and feminine energies. And I found over time working with hundreds of women that usually a woman was either in her masculine energy very strongly, which is the command, or they were very strongly in their feminine energy, which was the compassion. It was very rare when a woman first came to me that they had a balance of those two things.
Okay.
And, it's funny because the women who had more of the compassion, more of the feminine, they had a real aversion to the word command. They thought of the idea of men and power and an abuse of power. But to me, it's command of yourself. It's command of a room when you walk into a room and when you're leading something or just commanding your own energy.
Mm.
And it's command of what you want for your life, right? The legacy that you want to leave. And the women that were very strong in their masculine energy, very strong in that command, struggled with self-compassion.
Yeah.
And when you struggle with self-compassion, it's not unusual to struggle with compassion for others as well, because that self-judgment is you often have a belief that that's how the world is looking at you. And so you're constantly judging others as a shield, as a defense mechanism, right? And so this this way of leadership is both that self-compassion and that compassion for others and compassion for the world, along with that ability to own yourself, own your energy, own your strengths. And that balance of the two things is really what I have found brings a sense of fulfillment for women leaders and allows them to determine and discover, what does leadership mean to me? And so we do a deep dive into that inner critic voice that's stopping them from having compassion or stopping them from having command, right? We get more in touch with their internal intuition and their gut and their legacy that they want to have in the world. We tap into their values, their core values, as a compass for the choices that they make. And this to me is like the most important part of the whole process, because when you're wanting to when you want to feel fulfilled, part of what happens for most women, I talked about abandoning themselves, is they worry so much about the other person that they stop showing up as themselves. They conform to what they think they need to be. And when you come back to your values, even in conflict, if you're operating from your values, if the outcome isn't exactly what you'd hoped,
Mm.
you still feel okay. It's not a sense of disappointment. I mean, there is still a sense of disappointment. You'll still feel disappointed or frustrated or upset because emotions are a part of being human. But what usually leaves us feeling the most empty is that sense of self-abandonment. So
Yeah.
if you're not following your values, that sense of self-abandonment is what leaves us feeling so terrible. When we actually stay true to ourselves and what's most important to us in the world, even if the outcome isn't exactly what we want it to be,
Mm.
we know we stayed true to ourselves. And so that's that feeling of emptiness and beating ourselves up and disempowerment doesn't exist.
Yeah, wow. So how do we as especially this is a question for high achievers, how do we set goals now that hearing everything you said, right? How do we
Mhm.
set goals that feels good, that feels fulfilling? Yeah, how do we go about setting goals now that after we learn everything and that really help us to stay connected to our values, feel as good as it looks?
So the way to go about goal setting, once you're aware of your values and you get clear about what you want, you're looking at what is it that I truly want for myself in my life. And you look at the goal and then you say, look at your core values. How do I fulfill that goal operating from my values of? So give me an example of a goal that you have, Joyanne, and give me an example of a value of one of your core
Uh,
values.
I think I'm gonna put myself on the spot, but a goal right now would be I'm launching a new offer, so my goal would be to get five new clients.
Great. Okay, terrific. Now, when you think about your business and what's important to you around your clients, do you know what your core values are?
I would say
Okay.
authenticity, authenticity.
Beautiful. Okay, so what does it look like for you to go after those clients from the place of authenticity?
Right.
What does that look like?
Mm.
How do you um go about your marketing and your sales from a place of authenticity
Yeah.
rather than from a place of, I just need to get clients. I just need to get clients. I just need to fulfill the goal. So when you're going after it, from the place of, I need to make sure that I get the goal,
Yeah.
you might not be completely authentic,
Mm.
right? But if you come at it from a place of authenticity and you start to map out your plan for what's the first thing I'm going to do to fulfill this goal, and you start to create markers of along the way to determine if you're on the path to hitting your goal, you get to ask yourself, well, is that aligned with my value of authenticity? Right? So I have a value of connection. So when I'm going working with, potentially working with somebody new, that's the lens through which I look at how I go after new clients is by connecting with people. If I I'm not centering, I just need to get the client. I just need to get the client. I'm centering the value of connection so that if I don't feel connected with the person that's coming to me, that might not be a good match for us. And instead of just trying to get another client, first I'm going to determine if we can be connected. Because to me, in coaching, connection is imperative in order for the client to get what they need from our time together. And if I don't think that we have a strong connection, I might suggest another coach that I think they may have a strong connection with. Whereas if I was just centering the goal of getting the client, I wouldn't worry about that. I would just go after the sale, right?
Right. That's what so many people do, right? So yeah, I
Right.
mean, really love that question. Like I'm gonna ask myself, I'm gonna journal that tomorrow. So yeah, I mean that's wonderful. Now, is there anything else that you really want to talk about? Perhaps I didn't ask you or didn't let you.
We covered a lot.
Yeah.
We jammed it all in there. Even with me putting you on the spot.
I love that. I love that part. It's my the best.
Okay, good. Good. The thing I think that is most important is high achievers never feel like they have the time to do this kind of work for themselves, right? They don't prioritize something like this because they have to hit all the goals and they have to prioritize other things. And what I often find with a lot of my clients who eventually come to me, I have clients who have my name for 2 years and they don't have time. They don't have time. And then what they say when they actually make this space and time to do this kind of work is it creates so much more time in their life, so much more spaciousness.
Mm.
And so I would really encourage people to consider how taking time to ask yourself some of the harder questions that you never even thought of asking
Mm.
really allows you to create more space and time in your life to get the important things done. Because, kind of like what I said about work-life balance, if you're trying to make everything important, then there's really nothing is important enough to prioritize. So, if you get clear about where you want to be intentional and where you actually want to spend your time and energy, you get a lot clearer about what's important to say yes to and what's important to say no to, which goes into a whole other conversation around boundaries.
Yeah. I feel like we can talk for hours, and there's so many things that we can talk about, right? So, I wanted to say, as a high achiever, we sacrifice our own happiness, and because it's all about the goals, right? It's all about external things. But I think sometimes the harder question that I had to ask myself from time to time is what makes me happy, like what really makes me happy. And so yeah, thank you so much for that. But this is not the end, because we always end with our final 5 rapid fire questions. This is
Right.
a question that I ask all my guests at the end of the show, and every question has to be answered in 1 word or 1 sentence maximum.
Okay, I'll try.
Rapid fire. So the first question is, what is one thing you wish you knew earlier?
Oh gosh. I think that it's that failure isn't fatal.
Wow, I love that. And I love how long it took for you to answer this question. No, it's fine. Second question. If you could live your life all over again, what would you do differently?
I think I would be a double major in college and major both in theater and sociology or social science.
Well, that is a perfect answer from a high achiever, right? Double major. So, third question. What is something you're trying to learn or curious about right now?
Somatic work,
Right.
getting more into my body in and how this relates to coaching and how we operate in the world.
Yeah, I can totally see you do that, because I think you're giving me a sense of a healing, you're like a healer. So yeah, love that.
Thank you. That's so kind. Thank you.
The next question is, if you have 5 minutes and the whole world is listening to you, what would you say?
Stop worrying so much about what you're doing and start paying attention to who you're being, because
Wow,
that is really where true fulfillment comes from.
beautiful. I love that piece, because I think it kind of sums up our whole conversation today. Beautiful.
Yeah.
The last question is, what brings you the greatest joy?
Being on vacation with my family.
Love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, all right. Tell my people where they can find you, where's the best place to connect with you, and potentially work with you.
Great. You can find me on my website, michellepollack.com. I'm also on Instagram and LinkedIn. And I have a great resource. Speaking of boundaries, that, I hinted at the end there, called How to Stop Saying Yes When You Really Mean No. And you can find that on my website as well.
Yeah, I saw that on your website. By the way, I love your website. It's so cool. Like, yeah, I can tell that, you work in the creative field. That's so obvious. So thank you
Thank
so much,
you.
guys. I hope you love this episode, and take a screenshot of this if you're listening, share your IG story, and let us know what is your biggest takeaway. Go follow Michelle, connect with her. Put all the link in the show note below, so make sure you go and check it out. And remember to subscribe to this show so you'll never miss another episode coming to you every Wednesday. And I will always leave you the same way as I leave you with every other episode. Show up. The world needs you, and you need you. Thanks for listening, and I wish you all a joyful and amazing day ahead. Thank you again for tuning into Find Joy Joyan podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, take a screenshot and share it on your IG story and tag _podcast so I know you are listening. And leave us a positive review on Apple Podcasts if you haven't already done so. And remember to hit the subscribe button whether you are listening on Spotify, iTunes, Amazon Music, or any of your other favorite platforms. If you love what we are doing and want to become one of our sponsors, you can send me a DM to connect. And thanks for being here. I will see you soon in the next episode.